Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mrs.Moh's Live. If you did not just finish watching my Q&A, all right, my little shibber shabber, jibber jabber, however you say it, gibberish. If you did not just finish watching that video, exit this live and go watch that video. The link will be down below. Before you do that, please like and subscribe to my channel. You are greatly appreciated. Um, so let's get into this video. So as you can tell by the title, it's gonna be a story time. Today's story time is called When I Moved Out at 16. 16. Do you move out at 16? Shit. Anyways, into this video, why did I move out at 16? Technically, that was my first time actually moving out of my mother's house into someone else's house. And like, well, it wasn't my first time moving out, but it was my first time officially moving out and never going back. So yes. So when I was 16, I had met my husband. And when I met him, I literally met him one day over Skype, and the next day, like, I met him in person. And mind you, we lived only an hour away at the time, so whatever. So when I met him, he had came down to where I was living. We lived in two separate states. And basically, he stayed with me for like 2 weeks, a week and a half, 2 weeks, I think. And from there, he asked me if I wanted it to go stay with him. And I was like, boy, don't joke around. Like, I go stay with you. Do you not see my living conditions? Do you not see? Like, I met you because of your cousin. So basically, at the time, I was couch hopping, house hopping, um, from his cousins to my grandmother's. And the thing is that his cousin and my grandmother literally, like, this is my grandma's door, this is his cousin's door. So like I would like literally walk less than 2 feet of a path to get to my grandmother's house. And I was house hopping because my mother had kicked me out. And she had kicked me out, and I told her, like, I was like, listen, like, if I leave this time, like, there's no returning back for me. And I stuck by my word. Like, she kicked me out and I did not come back. She told me to come back plenty of times, within the time frame that I was couch hopping. But I was not having it. Like, at 16 years old, I was like, no, ma'am, I do not want to live with you ever again. I love you, but we need our space. Or not, we're going to kill each other. Literally. Um, so basically, I was couch hopping, and like I said, my husband was like, hey, come live with me. And my situation was so bad that he didn't even tell me come live with him. He told me come stay with him, like to like be his girlfriend, stay with him, whatever. That we got so comfortable with each other that I was like, until you tell me to leave, I ain't leaving. Like, I had no reason to go back home. Like I said, when I met him, I was couch hopping from my grandmother's cousins. So I really had no reason to go back home. So I'm just like, if you're personally not telling me to go back from where I came from, I ain't going nowhere. Um, and basically, um, me and my mom just growing up always had a hard time because my mom was more of like my best friend than she was my mother. And I I went through a lot growing up with my mom, with both of my parents, but in general, I lived with her most of the time, so I would say her. And it wasn't the first time I got kicked out. It wasn't the first time I went to go live with a boyfriend. Um, the first time I ever went to go live with a boyfriend, I was like 13 years old, people. Okay? I was a little girl who barely knew how to wipe my ass. All right? Living with a guy, having to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, make this nigga breakfast, make sure that I got dropped off at school because on some sick shit, I was still in middle school. Okay? Um, come straight home from middle school, clean my room, clean my house, make sure dinner was cooked for this nigga. And yeah, so like I said, it wasn't my first time, and I knew that when I made it official at 16 that I was not coming home. Like, I knew it was like official. I also lived with friends, like that let me stay at their house, and as long as I pitched in certain things, let it be food, let it be money to go out, let it be for rent, like as long as I pitched in somewhere, people didn't mind me staying there. So I did, and basically like my life consisted of that was couch hopping, staying at other people's houses besides mine. If I went to my house, it was because my I had nowhere else to go, literally. None of my friends at the time was like trying to hang out. I didn't have a boyfriend, so I didn't have someone to be up their ass, honestly. Like, I'm just a clingy person, so like I didn't have one at the time if I was home. Um I didn't have nothing to do with my life, and who says that? I had so much to do with my life at 16, but I just didn't know. Um so, or I was depressed. When I was depressed, like I would always be home constantly, like I was not going nowhere. So like that's the only time you would ever catch me in my house. Besides that, like if you know me on like at a personal level, you knew that I was never home. Like never home. And if I was home, it was for those reasons. So that's why when I met my boyfriend and he never really told me to go back home, I was like, well, mom, I'm moving out, and I got proposed to. We met in May. Okay. Yeah. So I moved out in May, like Mayish, June. I was still going back and forth from my mom's house to my boyfriend's house, just because the simple fact that like I still had a lot of clothes at my mom's house, and like it was summertime, so we wanted to get away, and that was still a getaway place for me. Like my mom was like, ah, just come over, and we would get away over there sometimes, or when I needed to pick up more clothes, or my school was still out there, like everything was still out there. I think officially until the following year was when like I actually became a resident of like Massachusetts, and I got a job out there, and you know because besides that, the first year I was commuting back and forth, going trying to go to school back and forth on the train. um and that didn't work out. So when we realized that didn't work out, I just stayed there. And he never told me to leave. And I never left. And basically, that's just really why I moved out when I was 16, or how. Like, there was no specific reason to why, besides my mom being my best friend and us clashing so bad that we would literally try, like beating each other, like I've been arrested. Thankfully she never pressed charges on me, but that's another story time. I've been arrested. The cops been called. I've been had my mom kicked out of apartments. I was a reckless little girl, all right? And I honestly believe God does things for a reason. And at the time, my husband definitely saved me from a situation that I was in that wasn't good for a 16-year-old. And not saying that going to live with a 23-year-old man was okay for a 16-year-old girl. No, that wasn't okay, because I wouldn't want that for my daughter. He wouldn't want that for his daughter. Um, but like I said, God does everything for a reason, and he definitely he definitely knew what he was doing when he put me in the paths of my husband, because I had a boyfriend at the time when I met my husband. I had to break up with my boyfriend because he was so far away, like he wouldn't be able to save me. He wouldn't be able to help me. He was young himself, so he was in no situations to try to help me. So I was really at the time trying to look for somebody to like save me, literally. If my mom wasn't gonna do it, then somebody, and I didn't know how to do it by myself at 16. I didn't know how to save myself at 16. So like I said, God does everything for a reason, and thanks to my husband, I came a long way from when I was 16 years old to now being 22, almost 23. Like I was 16 years old, and most 16-year-old nowadays, they're in high school and they're worrying about their college and they're worried about their money and what job they're about to get, how they're about to get their permit and license. Like I was not worried about any of that crap. What a resume was, like I didn't have the slightest idea of what I was gonna do with my life, and I was 16 years old. So when I met my husband, that's when things started falling into place for me. That's when I actually got my first job, like legit first job. When I got started building my resume off of like just, I was building my resume off of volunteer work that I did when I was like way younger than 16. Um, Trying to think what else. Just so many things have changed. Like my attitude, my anger, my aggression, my depression, like just all of it just came into place, when I first met him. And I was not the same 16-year-old I was when I left the state and to go live with him. I was not the same person, and to this day I'm still not the same person. And I thank him and I appreciate him for helping me with everything that has ever happened in my life. Again, as far as I've ever been, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be doing photography because he was the first person that got my camera. He's done a lot for me, let's just say. I mean, I haven't returned too. Takes two. But personally, for when I moved down and when I was so young, his family, his mother, before she passed away, she helped me a lot. She had a daughter who was my age. My sister-in-law is my age. My sister-in-law just turned 23 in May. I just turned 22 in December. So we're only like 6 months apart. And my mother-in-law, she was scared that I was gonna clash with my sister-in-law. I'm like, don't get me wrong, we definitely have and we still do because of our age, but it wasn't as bad as everybody was thinking because everybody thought I was like this 16-year-old little girl that didn't understand. You see, now there's a difference. I was definitely I didn't know what it was to be educated. I didn't know what it was to think about your future. I didn't know what it was of any of that. But adult, when it came to living a lifestyle as an adult, I felt like I've been doing that for a very long time. Um, and I'm just like, he just helped me put in the other pieces together to what it was to actually become an adult. And that's why my mother-in-law loved me because she was just like, okay, I can read you. I can see that you are the 16-year-old little girl that doesn't think like normal 16-year-old kids, that doesn't sit here and is loud and, ratchet and going around and just acting like a normal 16-year-old going to the mall with their friends and having groupies and things like that. I didn't have any of that. Even to this day, I'm a loner. I have not one single friend, like actual friend that comes to visit me, comes to visit my child. Like it's me, myself, and I and my child. Like that's it. So when I moved out at 16, that was a big, big game changer for me. And my mom was definitely okay with that. My father wasn't okay with it, but he really didn't can't say anything about it. Because it's not like he was gonna take me in and be like, come live with me now, because he didn't and he wasn't going to. My mom even at a certain point because when I had actually first met my husband, I was on the run for 2, almost 3 years from my probation. And basically, like, I did not attend court, and from there, I've always had a warrant out for my arrest, and I was like too scared to turn myself in. So I waited mad years. That's another story. And basically, she ended up signing a paper. Well, no, she wrote out a paper and got it notarized. So, like, she gave custody to my husband when I was 16 and he was 23 years old. She gave him custody of me. So literally, I probably still have like the paper in my file. Like the paper was just like, I so and so, give permission for so and so to have full responsibility of my child, allowed to sign any documents, any medical issues, like he's responsible for her. And we all three signed it and went and got it notarized, literally. So that's some crazy ass BS. That again I wouldn't want my daughter to ever do and I wouldn't allow. But this is my story and this is what I went through. And yeah, like, can nobody actually say anything to my husband after that because I had permission, and I wasn't afraid. So I was walking with him without a problem. And like, as you keep hearing, there's an age difference. So that would have been a big problem for us as well. If anybody was to find out, was because I was 16 and he was 23 when I first met him. So because of that, that was another reason why. Um, that was another reason why my mom needed to sign that. Oh my God. I just thought about something. Sorry. So it was because of that. And then on top of that, like before doing that, we was just gonna get married because in certain states, like, well, in this state and in the other state, like if you're 16 years old and you have consent from whoever's your guardian, like you can get married. But the thing is, because my parents have joint custody, my mom don't have full custody, never did of me. We needed permission of my father. And my father wasn't gonna save me, but my father did not think it was okay for me either to run off and get married at 16 with a 23-year-old man. So he was like, when you're 18 years old, you can do whatever the hell you want with your life. You can marry whoever the hell you want, but while you're a minor, I am not gonna feed into this bullshit, basically. So that's why we ended up having to get a paper notarized to him having rights over me because it's insane. And my dad could have fought that, but he didn't fight that. And I don't even think he knew about that. So what could he have done then? So yeah. And ever since then, I never returned back home. And I never lived with my mother ever again. But up until now that my mom just remarried, I was always able to walk into my mother's house and feel like that was my house. So like technically, like, can't nobody tell me shit. There was no man in my mom's house that was ever gonna tell me that that was my house or I couldn't sleep there. I chose not to sleep there. I chose not to live there, and I chose not to live there so I can have a better relationship with my mother. So I can learn to respect my mother because that's clearly like what God wants. Like if you don't respect your parents, like that's a deal breaker for me if you don't respect your parents, and it's only a deal breaker because I'm just like, as much crap that I've been through in my whole entire life, I've always loved my parents, and yes, I had a hard time respecting my mother, but that's because parents needed to learn nowadays how to teach their children to respect them, and we had that problem because she was my best friend and not my mother. But besides that, now you won't catch me really disrespecting my mom. You won't catch me putting my hands on my mother. Like, you would never catch me doing that. Like, I'm a grown ass woman with a child, and I ain't got time for that. Like, that's some little kid shit. Um, now, like, yeah, I still get into arguments, disagreements with my mother, and that's okay. But I don't live with her anymore. that's just basically how I moved out at 16 with my husband. Like I said, it wasn't my first time, but it was my first official time and not ever returning back home. I hope you guys enjoyed my story time. You guys heard little snippets of other stories that are going to be in there. So stay tuned for those. Like, why was I on the run for 2.5 years and had a warrant out for my arrest and got arrested? Um, why why did I decide to get married at 18? Um, so many stories. Like I've always said that I can write a book of how interesting my life was. And so many things that I've gone through. So oh well. Stay tuned for the next story time, guys. Y'all are mis amores. Thank you so much for viewing my contents, my videos. I hope you guys enjoy watching them as much as I enjoy recording them. Literally, like I love doing this. Like it just, I don't know. I'm not getting rewarded by doing this, you know. Um, it feels good. It feels good to be able to talk. Bye.